So look at these lovely tomatoes. So these are variety Cocktail Crush F1. So we'll be looking at these a little bit closer in a moment. So I put up a video a few weeks ago, now about 2 weeks ago, something like that, and it was about the 2024 gardening year maybe being a little bit on the challenging side, and it appears that that's been the case worldwide, or indeed many other parts of the world as well as the UK. Quite a lot of engagement in the comment section there. So what I thought I'd do is come to a different location today. Some of you who've been viewing me for a long time now may recognise this as where I used to do a lot of filming some years ago now. So we're back here. Lots to show in this garden here. So let's kick off with these lovely tomatoes here. We'll have a look, and you could see the fantastic crop there. So before we start, please feel free to share this video with anyone who you may think may find it interesting or useful. Please feel free to click the like if you like it, and if you'd like to be notified when I put up any further videos, please feel free to subscribe. It really helps my channel, and you'll also get notified of when I put up any videos if you click on the bell icon as well. So Cocktail Crush F1. Now, they are said to be, as I stated before, blight resistant, so that can be a very good idea. So they are an F1. I'm generally not into growing F1s really, because to me it's a bit too much of an intervention. It's not genetic modification, but it is a form of selective breeding. I'm more of a traditional gardener, but as many of you may be aware, I have grown one of these in my own polytunnel. It came from the grower here actually, but in terms of my gardening, they're not really where I'm at the moment, but they do have their uses very much. So these are incredibly tasty, and it can be a shame, of course, if you grow a crop of tomatoes, plants, whatever, nice strong plants, ready to get some lovely tomatoes on, or you even get your tomatoes and then they get blight. Very frustrating indeed. So less likely to happen, it's said, with this variety here. So you might want to look into it. So taste-wise, these are incredibly delicious. They've got that nice sweet tanginess about them. I like to pick mine when they're a little bit on the more paler side. I generally don't leave mine to go sort of deep red. I like them with a bit of tanginess as well. Got a few seeds. So if you grow from an F1, it's very unlikely that it'll be true to type. So hence you will then have to buy more seeds the next year. So that is a concern, as opposed to more open pollinated varieties that I traditionally grow, something maybe like Moneymaker or Gardener's Delight, for example. So let's have a look at some of these close up, and you'll see the huge crop that is here. So the grower here has already given away loads of tomatoes. I've had many, other people have had many. I mean, bags and bags full, and there's still plenty more to come. And providing the weather stays warm, should end up with a lot more lovely ripe tomatoes here as well, so that's grand. So come over to these plants here. Now you can see here big trusses of green tomatoes here, plenty more to come. Of course, if they don't ripen, you've always got the option of making green tomato chutney, so that's always a good option. But I'm quite hopeful actually that many of these will ripen into October, because the weather is still relatively warm around here. It's sort of low 20s outside, so about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, give or take a little bit, so it's nice enough for these to stay warm to ripen, so that's good. Of course, warmer in here as well. Still got sunshine, as you can see, so that's grand. And let's have a look down here now, and we'll talk a little bit more about the growing medium. So I'm taking no credit at all for these. I didn't grow them, I'm merely showing them to you. So you can see here, this growing medium is very good, very nutrient dense, rich in organic matter. It's done in the no dig style, so I find that a very good style of gardening. Lots of lovely homemade compost here, which I'll show you where that's made in a moment, and you can see the grower waters into these, so they've always got some water available. What you don't want to do with tomatoes is let them completely dry out and then give them loads of water, because then what can happen is it can cause the plant to suck up the water, then quickly goes into the fruit and causes them to split, which you really don't want. So growing medium wise, this is very nutrient dense, but yet it's well draining. They don't want to be sitting in loads of water, so to speak, but yet you still want to keep it sort of lightly damp around them. Always adding to the growing medium. This will have more compost added to it after these have finished, so that you're always returning the nutrients to the growing medium, the soil, etc. You know, you want nice strong plants, nice strong crop, and then hopefully strong you. Don't want to just keep taking all the time. Always put nutrients back into the growing medium. And we've got some lovely tomatoes here, lovely red ones. Let's have a look. So just go nice and close up. So there we are, look at those, absolutely beautiful. Big, big, big trusses there, look. And as we go over to here, big, big, big trusses as well. You can see the growers pinched out the tops because they don't want any more to set. I mean, there's some flowers up there, but the chances of them making anything this late in the year, a crop, is probably unlikely now, because probably around October the colder weather will start to set in a little bit. But who knows, the weather this year has been different and it may stay warm well into the autumn. Wouldn't want to make any predictions in those regards. So yeah, look at that truss there, look. You can get them to ripen. 5, 6, 7, 8, 11 on that one, and you can count that one if you want. There we go. And the grower only said to me just before I filmed this video, they gave away a big bag of tomatoes yesterday, and that's been happening regularly. So real good achievement here. And here as well, in fact, you can see they've been tied to the polytunnel supports here using string, and up here because it's been getting so heavy with crop. Plenty more to come there. There you go, you can see. So one good thing, you can have a real successive ripening period of time. These have been ripening now probably for 6 weeks or so, something like that. Tomatoes did seem to be about a month late this year, but as I stated before, if the warm weather continues and we get the crop now, that's really no big deal. So the grower initially planted the seeds in April in modules, germinated them inside, I believe, and then later on, when they were big enough, transplanted them out into pots of this sort of size, and then put them in here probably around the end of May time. You want to, if you can, plant your tomatoes out after risk of frost has passed. Now, I have gone against that rule at times and planted mine out when frost could still happen. That's a risk that some people are prepared to take at certain times. I am. You can always consider protecting them if a frost comes, if you planted them out early. For example, you can get, here you go, these are handily placed, aren't they? You can get a bucket like this and you can put it over your small plant like that, and maybe even put some fleece over the top if you're getting a frost when your young plant is out. Just something to consider, really. But any questions you've got on tomatoes, anything like that, what's doing well in your garden, how are your tomatoes doing, what varieties are you growing, I would be very interested, and I'm sure other people will be very interested as well. Okay, that's tomatoes here. Got more to look at now. So down here now, same variety once again. You can see these are being grown in a raised bed outside. Now the plants aren't as vigorous because it's cooler out here, but yet still carrying lovely crops here. So actually, one observation is these are actually in general a little bit sweeter than the ones grown in the polytunnel, and the reason for that, I'm assuming, will be because this green cover probably does stop some of the sun's rays getting through, and these have probably got a higher sugar content. But if you've got the option of growing outside or inside, with regards to the prevention of blight, some schools have thought, oh, it's better to grow them under cover to keep the rainfall off. But options here to grow out and in. It's nice to grow a bit of both. If you can only grow them outside, so be it, that's your only option. So with regards to taste, we'll pick one of similar colour, like this one is here. Now, another observation, these are actually smaller than the ones in the polytunnel. So let's try this one. sweeter and tangier. Better flavour from these than these in here, even though they are bigger. All planted at the same time, planted out at the same time, or around the same time. Same seeds from the same source. No real difference apart from they're grown under cover and they're not. Maybe if you've got a clear polytunnel, they would be more similar, who knows, but just an observation there. Very good, let's have a look. So as we approach the plants here, you can see the beautiful crops these are carrying. Once again, these are regularly picked from, and many have produced already, but yet many to come as well. So they look really beautiful, you can see there. And once again, these are watered regularly to avoid the splitting. So down here, you can see very similar, if not the same, growing medium as was in the polytunnel. Nutrient dense, fertile, but yet well draining, which is what you want to be aiming for. And we'll just go all the way around here, look, and you can see we've got plenty of beautiful tomatoes here to eat currently, and all being well, weather permitting of course, plenty more to come. So regarding feeding, I don't know if these have been fed, but if you're growing in containers, or maybe your growing medium is not particularly fertile, or you just want to make sure, you can consider feeding your plants with something like this, an organic tomato feed. This is made by Nature Safe, and I can imagine this would be a good one. Vitax, I think, is another good one. Basically, I personally prefer organic feeds if possible. You can of course make your own, but you know, if you want to buy one, something like this could be a good idea. Now, this isn't a sponsorship or anything like that, so do your own research. Just have a look at organic tomato feeds and they may help you. So many of you have seen my tomatoes I grew at my own garden, and my growing mediums I make, they consist very much of my own homemade compost. I've got videos on that. I didn't feed mine once this year and they produce very well. So of course, building good soil, in my opinion, is more important than feeding. But let's say your soil isn't good, or you just want to make doubly sure, look into an organic tomato feed, because it could make difference. So here we are. Now, I am particularly fond of this apple tree here because I actually grafted this onto a rootstock myself, probably about 10 years or so ago now, and this is variety Winter King, otherwise known as Winston, named after Winston Churchill. So this is a long keeping apple, and it's said to keep well into the following year if kept under ideal conditions. I have heard people say that back in the old days, a traditional way of storing apples before houses were centrally heated was to store them underneath beds upstairs, where it was generally quite cool and less likely to rot, etc, etc. But my understanding, a good temperature to store apples at is about 10 degrees C, something like that. Don't quote me on that, do your own research. But if you want a long keeping apple, certainly this variety here, Winter King, otherwise known as Winston, could be it. So they do hang on the tree for quite a period of time. You can see there's not that many dropping off yet. Now I'm going to pick one now, and we're going to just have a look and see what these are like. So it's quite a beautiful apple. That's what they look like. So a lovely redness to them. Now taste wise, now really nice, really crispy at this stage, and they've got quite a nice tanginess to them. I like an apple to have a bit of a bite to it, which I consider a nice sort of part of the English apple, a nice bite to it, a little bit sourness. I really like that. So these are said, if you keep them in storage, the flavour can actually improve, get sweeter as the crop gets older. They will probably get softer, but if you want a long keeping apple, look into the variety of Winter King. So there's all sorts of varieties of apples. You really can have quite a crop. So let's say you've got room for 3 trees. You might consider an early ripening apple, something like Discovery or Worcester Pearmain, then a mid-season apple, something like James Grieve, and then maybe something like this, Winter King, for a later ripening variety of apple, and of course a good keeper as well. So if you really want to get into self-sufficiency, partial self-sufficiency of apples, that could be a way of doing it. But lovely variety, looks beautiful as well. Tree has grown beautifully over the last 10 years and lovely crops. Let's have a closer look. The tree here, you can see that made quite a size. To my knowledge, it's not been pruned in the 10 years since I grafted it. So we go down here and the rootstock is here, you can see, which I purchased from Blackmore Nursery, a very good nursery. I presume they still sell rootstocks, and of course they sell plenty of other fruit products as well, fruit trees, etc, etc. Very good. In fact, I got many of my own trees from there. So there we go, rootstock there, and you can see here this is where the graft was. So I've got many videos on grafting. I filmed a lot of those quite early on in my YouTube hobby. So we have a look here now. As we bring the camera around, you could just see the huge crop this is carrying as we go up into the canopy. So we'll have some lovely little close-ups because these are such a beautiful ornamental apple, as well as their greater keeping and eating qualities. So we'll have a look here. Got plenty, a nice load there. Now this is probably the heaviest cropping part of the tree, and you can see here. So let's just have a little zoom in and we can see just how beautiful these are. There we are. That can be a lovely bonus of growing fruit that, as well as a food crop, also very ornamental as well. Here we are. So in this region where I am here, fruit does grow very well. The soil is very light here, so it can be issues with it drying out, particularly in hot summers. So you need to make sure you keep watering. But in terms of getting fruit crops quite early, the soil here can be very good because it warms up quick because the moisture content is lower. So you can actually get some quite early crops here. So plenty of fruit can be grown in this area. With my own gardening jobs I've done for people, I've worked in places where the soil is clay, and then of course you can have more issues. The trees can end up sitting in the water, in the clay soil, you understand where I'm coming from, doesn't drain as well, warms up later, they get the crop later. Sometimes you just have to think a little bit about where you're planting your trees. I knew that this tree was going to do really well here. There's a mulberry tree over there, some of you may have seen it. There's a quince tree there. There's been other fruit trees over the years in this garden. Once upon a time there was a big apple tree over there, a cooking apple, probably a Bramley. It got diseased in the end, but that grew well here. There was a plum tree that also got disease eventually. That grew very well here. So, and quite a lot of fruit is grown in East Anglia, southeast UK anyway. So just think on that. Maybe if you've got quite clay soil, you can always consider adding organic matter. You could consider growing trees in raised beds where you can control the growing medium so that it's not sitting in too much moisture, because they don't want to have waterlogged roots. So just consider it. But apple winter king, great variety to grow. Let's look at something else. So before we move on from this tree here, I got the scion for grafting for this tree from Stephen Hayes on the Fruitwise channel. Very good channel indeed, Stephen Hayes Fruitwise. If you put that in YouTube, his channel should come up. And he was a big influence on me when I first started YouTubing, really. In fact, he was probably the one who inspired me the most to start a YouTube gardening channel. So there we are. So he sent me the scion, he sent many other people scions at that time. So there's probably trees grafted from his scions all over the country. And I think he was also sending them to parts of Europe as well at the same time. So that was very kind of him. And there's a little piece here of his lovely orchard in Hampshire. There's a little piece of it here in this garden here. So there we go, Stephen Hayes Fruitwise. Check his channel out because I learned a lot from it, and I'm sure you will too. So composting. Now, one of the reasons why crops do so well in this garden is because a lot of composting goes on and the nutrients are always being returned to the soil growing medium. And in these tumblers here, otherwise known as Daleks, 3 guesses why, and some lovely compost being made here. And it's all done under a proper system, I believe. And the fresh one, the fresh greenery, etc., starts off in that one and then gets moved. So we've got some lovely compost here, a bit of horse manure in that one. And here we go. Yep, that's horse manure, but a bit further on. I'll take you closer with the camera. You can have a look at these in a moment. And then here we've got a bit more there. And let's have a look at this one. And then this one is quite close to the finished article. So this is regularly being worked and regularly being turned. So yeah, there is a time commitment in that. I don't produce anywhere near the same amount of compost here, but it doesn't matter if you produce this much or a lot less. Give it a go. I've got plenty of videos on how to make compost, and quite often people overcomplicate it. You really don't need to. It's quite a simple process, and by keeping it simple you can encourage yourself a bit more. So let's have a look. We'll just go into this one here, and you can see, look, so rhubarb leaves there, all sorts of other bits, they go in there. Now as we go over to this one here, there you go, a bit of horse manure in that one. We come over to this one here. There you go, look, you can see that's worked a little bit more, really beautiful. And over to here, look at that, full of life that one, plenty of wood lice in that one. And then we go, if Dan can get the lid off, go into this one here, there you go. And that's pretty good. I'll let you have a look at that. So that's beautiful. That's ready to be, the worm there, look, that's ready to be applied to the garden. So picking some beautiful raspberries here. So I hope they're coming out on the camera there. So carrying a lovely crop this year, and the variety escapes me of these. I'm very sorry about that. So these are autumn fruiting, meaning they fruit around autumn time. So September, October, maybe even a little bit before, after that, etc., depending on weather, individual years differences, etc. So autumn fruiting raspberries, they fruit off of canes which grew that growing season. So for example, these would have grown up this year, whereas summer fruiting varieties fruit on canes which grow from the previous year. So you need to make sure when you prune them at the right time. For example, if you pruned these before they produced, you wouldn't get any crop. But what you also do with these is you prune these down normally around the end of the year or early the following year. But of course with summer fruiting varieties, ones that grow this year, you would leave them because you want them to produce next year. So that's quite an important distinction between the two there. So these are very good, absolutely delicious. I love raspberries because you get quite a large crop for the amount of space they take up, because of course they're growing vertically. Look into the growing of raspberries. So no video of this garden would be complete without showing the lovely brassicas which grow here. They do very well in these raised beds. You can see there's very tight knit netting here, which I think has been doubled up. Yeah, it's been doubled over to keep the cabbage white butterflies off. No caterpillars on here, no bird damage, very much protected. You really need to protect brassicas from cabbage white butterflies by having a tight netting or mesh over, and also birds as well, which can attack these. They might not attack these at this stage now that they're mature plants, but certainly in their early stages. But generally when I grow brassicas, I like to keep them covered up all the time if I can. So you can see this lovely kale here. Kale is so nutritious, relatively easy to grow provided you cover it up, and very tasty as well. And here, this is a kale. I think this is variety Nero di Toscana or something similar. It certainly looks like that anyway. So very good, lovely crop there. So we'll just have a little look here. So these are leeks and they're covered up. There's this leaf miner, is it, or leaf beetle, leek beetle, whatever you want to call it, and many people now are growing leeks under cover to prevent damage from that beetle, from that pest. So you might want to consider that. But some lovely leeks there. These would be lovely in winter to eat. Nothing like a bit of leek and potato soup, is there? So we'll just bring the camera round here. Now we go into the kale here. You can see here how tall and big these kales are. Probably about, oh dear crikeys, probably about, I don't know, 2.5 feet, maybe 1 metre tall, something like that. Really nice indeed. Back to the curly kale here, all sorts of varieties of that. And I think, I may be wrong here, this is some sort of, well, meant to be some sort of purple sprouting broccoli, but you could see just how big these plants are. You know, these are well over 1 metre, maybe about 3.5, 4 feet tall. Yeah, 4 feet tall, something like that. So very good indeed. Brassicas here, an absolute success. So you can see here, now these are really beautiful. This is Swiss chard. Like the kale, very nutritious. In my experience, this is less trouble to grow. I often grow this outside with no protection, and nothing, unless of course the plant is very young, really seems to damage it. That's at least an observation. So chard, perpetual spinach, it's all from the same family. So perpetual spinach, otherwise known as leaf beet chard, is often used as a spinach substitute, but it's not a true spinach, it's actually a chard. So we've got plenty of chard here, which is really good. So this, just like the brassicas you just saw, these are fully cold resistant around here generally. Of course, if you get a very cold winter, sometimes I've noticed the chard struggles a little bit. Maybe not so much with the kale, etc., but sometimes chard can struggle with a very cold winter, but generally here it'll go all the way through. Depends on what climate you are though. You need to make sure you do your own research depending on where you are, that the crop you're growing does satisfy your requirements with the weather, etc., where you are. So with regards to crops like this, it's often good to try and get plenty of growth on these around this time of year, because what will happen in November, there or thereabouts anyway, days get considerably shorter, temperature generally drops, and the growth of plants tends to either slow or may indeed even stop. And of course, if you've stripped your plant all the way down to nothing, it's not really going to grow much for your winter crop. Now, of course, it will probably put up some nice growth in the early spring, but you want to be picking over the winter, don't you? So it's often good to make sure you're leaving plenty on, such as this or what you just saw with the kale, so that you've got lovely crops that you can pick throughout winter, because as stated, after November won't grow too much. So that's certainly a little thing to consider. So I hope you can see these okay. Now these are blackberries which have been propagated. So we've got many of them here, as you could see. I think I'm going to end up with 1 or 2 of these in my own garden, which will be a nice welcome addition because I currently don't have any. Now you can see there, look, very healthy indeed. Blackberries very good to grow. Now these are a thornless variety, which in many ways is good for picking. I have heard the school of thought, some people, and I may even subscribe to it myself, that the thornless varieties maybe don't taste as nice as the lovely prickly ones you pick out in the wild. I don't know, I've never done a sugar content test or taste test under strict controls on them. That is a school of thought, but certainly for picking, and I would imagine commercial grown blackberries would also be on thornless varieties as well, but I might be wrong, so there we go. But really easy to propagate. Now I do have a video that I made years ago on this, which I will link in the description box below, and you can learn how to propagate blackberries. The same rules apply for tayberries and loganberries as well. So yeah, these are lovely, and a real low cost way really that you can up your own fruit production. You could stick one of these in a large pot, you can put it in your garden, whatever. You could go out into the wild, and if you're allowed to, of course, you can pick blackberries out there in a climate such as the UK if you've got them. So there we are, nicely propagated here, plenty of them, and once again, a bit more growing success here. So rhubarb, no traditional English garden is complete without rhubarb, which is certainly what I need to add to my own garden. So rhubarb, really good, traditionally harvested in sort of early springtime, maybe about April, and you can get some really beautiful crop from rhubarb, and it also freezes well. So what you don't eat, you can freeze. You know, rhubarb and rhubarb crumble is a very very delicious dish which I very much enjoy. I think many people do, and you can make it yourself. Doesn't have to be expensive at all, and of course you can grow your own rhubarb, or at least some of it. So some beautiful rhubarb here, good crop to grow, generally fully hardy here in the UK. Some people force it, you know, by putting a dustbin lid over it to get it to crop quicker. Now, some people say that's not the best thing to do because you can actually overstrain the plant and shorten its life, or even kill it by doing that. So you might get an earlier crop, but long term you might lose out because you might end up losing your crop. So that's a decision you'll have to make. So you can look into rhubarb forcing if you wish. There we are. I have even, to be honest, when I was really sort of hardcore gardening, I've actually forced strawberries into early cropping by growing them in containers, bringing the container strawberries into the house so they warm up quicker and get flowers on them earlier to get strawberries that way. You know, there's all these little things you can look into if you want. But yeah, rhubarb very good, very nutritious. I have heard that it's often used as sort of a natural laxative, so if one is having problems in those regards, rhubarb could be a good one to look into. Nice early fruit, or it's probably a vegetable actually, but generally treated as a fruit early in the season. So yeah, rhubarb, great. So this is a little thing you can do. So this may not seem a particularly important thing to do, but you can see these salad leaves grown in this pot. So let's say, for example, you had a polytunnel. You can also do this outside, but quite often works later in the year very well in a polytunnel or greenhouse. You could have, say, loads of pots along there, or one big pot, build one out of wood, whatever you want, as long as your supports can take the weight, and just you could sow your salad leaves. And this is a great way of picking salads, an easy way. So for example, you can just come out here and pick. One problem people often find when trying to eat healthy is they just don't have things available when they want them. So if you've got something like this, some salad leaves, you fancy a salad or whatever, you just come out and pick, take it away, and this should hold into the winter. Whether it makes its way through, of course, can depend on the variety you grow, how cold it gets, how well you tend to it, etc. Pests, if anything, attacks it. But this is a nice little thing. So in this polytunnel here, you know, fresh tomatoes on tap, fresh salad on tap. Of course, this can be made bigger. You could set the raised beds here, like you see with the tomatoes there, with salad as well. So nice diversity of crop, very wide range of things to do, and very much worthwhile. So we're back to our normal location, and we're going to have a look around here. Plenty more to see, and we're going to start over here with some lovely grapes. So this here is a variety of grape called Ria. It's a Slovakian variety, and I've had it planted out here for a few years now. Last year they got some sort of fungal disease, but this year these seem to be free of that. So these ripen a little bit later than the grapes you saw in my previous video, which of course is a good thing for, once again, for successional cropping, etc. So you've got nice varieties of crops, etc. over a period of time. But yeah, these are really good. They're not quite there yet. They'll go a sort of nice purple colour when they're ready, pinky purple, quite ornamental. But we'll just try one here. So you can see they're quite a large grape. A lot of people say, well, your English grown grapes aren't very big. Well, you know, that's quite a nice sized grape to me. Yeah, I mean, they're perfectly edible like that, a bit on the sharpish side, but really they need another few weeks or so. Beautiful tasting grape. Quite a soft grape, but yeah, nice ornamental value as well, and compared to the sort of standard UK grown grape, if you want to even call it that, these add a little bit of curiosity with their shape and colour, etc. So let's have a closer look. So if we go right into that bunch there, look, you can see just how beautiful that indeed looks. I hope that's coming out all right. We'll try to go around this angle a little bit, maybe you'll get a bit of a better glimpse. But yeah, so imagine these, I'll try and make a video on it when they go their lovely final colour. But yeah, there's plenty on here. They're all here as well, look, all down. You can see those, I hope, all down into there. So yeah, lovely nice crop of Ria grapes there. So still got plenty of these Muscat Blanc. If you saw the last video I put up, you see just how many of these I had. Given plenty of these away, too many of these out here for me to eat on my own. If I was a winemaker, I really would have been happy as Larry because you know, plenty of grapes this year, and there's a nice big bunch down here starting to go over now, a lot of them, but still perfectly edible, and they're really they're incredibly sweet at the moment because we've had plenty of sun and they've been on the vine for quite a while now to ripen. So yeah, Muscat Blanc, it's a very nice grape. I'll just let you have a close-up look of them, look. So there we go, and we'll have a close-up look of the vine. So as we go down here, look, still got a big old bunch there, still got bunches here, and as I go over here, you can see that it's starting to turn almost into sultanas now, or raisins, or whatever you want to call them. But yeah, still got plenty on there, can still pop out here and have a nice meal of grapes. I think the birds enjoy them, and I think the squirrels do as well. So that's fine, and there's just still plenty more. So over here I go now. Plenty of potatoes there ready to come up. I could tip them out now if I wanted. Varieties Condor and Maris Piper, but I want to take them all up at once for simplicity when I take these up as well. So these are Maris Piper, no sorry, these are Condor here, and I actually planted these in July, which is relatively late for the planting of potatoes, so these will be ready considerably later than what they already are. But once again, I want to take them all up at the same time for simplicity, so there will be, all being well, a video on that. I've got a squash or a pumpkin plant here. I think it's a squash. It just didn't happen this year. Squash just did not seem to want to grow around here. What was it like where you are? I'd be interested to know. If the weather stays warm, who knows, but squash don't really like to go below about 20 degrees C, about 68 Fahrenheit, so that's probably going to happen before anything comes of maturity here. But you never know, I'm not giving up, I'm going to leave it there. So let's see how they do. So we'll go over here to the grape variety Lakemont Seedless, and these are starting to come now. They're not quite ready yet. They are edible by my standard, probably a bit sharp for some, but I like them a little bit on the tangy side as well. But yeah, so we've got absolutely loads. I mean, look in there, look, you could see just, we really have got truckloads here of Lakemont Seedless grapes. So these are a US variety, almost honey sweet when ripe. I mean, look at these ones, look. So these have actually been exposed to quite a bit of sun up here, and you notice they're a bit more on the yellowy colour. That can happen. So yeah, they're quite sweet, them ones. So along with the rear, these are a bit of a later ripening variety than the Muscat Blanc. So yeah, you won't lose if you've got the space by planting more than one variety, because I'm picking sort of fresh grapes from this garden probably for seems like about 2 months of the year, might even be a bit longer. So yeah, nothing wrong with that. And you can see here, I'll just zoom in for you on the camera, they're actually growing up. You can see them, look, growing up into the plum tree here. So I'm going to be pruning that when the time comes. Normal time is early winter. I like to prune my grapevines, but yeah, all doing good. And once again, loads more Lakemont Seedless here. I mean, look under there, look. And what I'll do is I'll remove these leaves as time goes on if I want to increase the sugar content, bring some on before others, etc, etc. But I've made videos on all of that in the past. There we are. And over here, this brings me back to, you've seen this many times already, the Worcester Pearmain apple tree, which is lovely here. These apples are certainly ready now, but they've been ready for some time. But the thing about leaving them this long is the sweetness increases, and when these are mature, these have a beautiful sweetness to them and quite a nice, almost crispy softness to them. It's hard to explain, but can be worth leaving some on to ripen later, as well as your earlier ones, just so you've got a variety of tastes. So you can see I've showed you quite a lot of crops in this video, the other garden and here. And one good thing I think to implement, if you can, in your own garden or your allotment, is to try and grow plenty of different crops. One reason for this, of course, is if you get a good year with one thing or two things or three things, whatever, and a bad year with a few other things, it can sort of like level itself out. Whereas let's say, for example, you just grew a load of tomatoes and they all got blight and that was the end of it, you might be a little bit disappointed. But maybe as well as growing the tomatoes, you might think, oh, I'll grow some beetroot as well or something like that. It can also be good to grow more than one thing or one variety, I should say, of one crop. For example, you could see different varieties of grapes I've got. I've got the Rhea, the Muscat Blanc, the Lakemont Seedless, and you may remember the Suffolk Red and the Venus, which I've also got growing behind the polytunnel there. So 5 varieties. So for example, last year the Rhea got a fungal disease, but yet the Lakemont Seedless produced beautifully, and I also got a few Muscat Blanc because the vine was a bit smaller then, put on a bit of growth, and it cropped this year on that. So you understand where I'm coming from. It's very good to diversify. I think there is a name for it, isn't it? Biodiversity, something like that. So if you get a pest on one crop, then your other crop is doing very well indeed, hopefully. Anyway, all the best. See you next time.